All right, so today we're here with Mr. Craig Goldstein, and today he is going to talk to us about the first step. So just to let everybody know that Craig is not representing AA or any one of the fellowships or any other A for that matter, that he's simply here to share his personal experience regarding the first step, and also he is representing the Thrive Alumni Mentor Program. Wait, yeah, that's exactly what it's called. So, all right, so we're going to go ahead and read the first step, which comes out of the NA book, and it says, "We admitted we are powerless over our addiction and that our lives had become unmanageable." And my first question for you today, Craig, would be, what did unmanageability look like for you, and what made you become honest enough to surrender to the first step?
Okay, great questions. What unmanageability looked like to me was when I sat down with my sponsor. I kind of had to carry out an assignment, and the assignment was to look at every avenue of my life, my intimate relations, my personal relations, my family relations, my education, my work history, my finances. And so as I examined each one of those avenues, I was able to come out of denial and admit complete defeat, which is part of what I had to do in step one. There's no way I can manipulate my drug use and use successfully. So by admitting my unmanageability in all of these avenues, then I was able to surrender, which is also part of step one, accept the fact that my life was truly unmanageable, that I wasn't a functioning addict or alcoholic, and that opened the door for something new.
Excellent. And with that being said, can you describe your understanding of powerless before you started working the steps, and then your understanding of powerlessness after you started working the steps?
Sure. I didn't really feel like I was powerless before I started working the steps. I felt like I could control my world, that I could force outcomes, make things happen my way. And as long as that happened and things were happening my way, then everything was cool. But when they didn't, then the SHIT started to hit the fan if everything wasn't going my way. So I felt like I was the almighty God. I was the one with all the power. The world evolved around me. And I come to find out when I started working step one that I was very wrong. That I wasn't the one with all the power. Me with my power and my self-will run rampant, I always ended up back in treatment, back starting from ground zero. And I got to the point where I just had to accept responsibility and didn't want to go there anymore. So I had to admit my powerlessness, admit that I didn't have power over my disease. Once I took that first one, my addiction was unleashed all over again. I couldn't exchange one drug for another. I couldn't replace alcohol with drugs. I couldn't just smoke or drink on the weekends. I couldn't just drink on holidays. I tried all of that, and part of admitting complete defeat and powerlessness is that I surrender to the fact that I am not going to be able to drink just for today. And if I do that each day, then I'll find myself making it without drinking or drugging through the holidays, through birthdays, through everything else that we usually celebrate, and learn that we can have fun without that. We can have fun and laugh and have a good time without the drugs and alcohol. So I think that was hard for me to see before I came in the program. And I didn't even realize that I didn't control as much as I thought I had control over. I thought I could control others to think my way, act my way, especially intimate relations. I felt like, I could make my spouse the way I want them. And that just doesn't happen. I learned in recovery that as I surrender and accept, which are the two principles in step one, that I have to acknowledge others' feelings, others' presence, and I'm not the almighty God. I'm not the one with all the power. And if I think I am the one with all the power and I start moving back into self-will, then my addiction gets unleashed all over again. Because I'm going to relapse in my thinking and my behavior way before I pick up that first drug.
Excellent. So with that being said, what is your idea of powerlessness today? What does it mean to you to be powerless?
It means that basically every day I have to ask the one with all the power, which is my higher power, who I've built a relationship with. I have to ask that power for some guidance, some direction, to give me the knowledge of what his will for me is and the power to carry that out. Because left to my own devices and I take control again, I will crash and burn. And that's been the pattern. I have to look at my patterns. My pattern's been, it starts out small, gets big, and I end up with a pile of wreckage back in treatment. So I could either surrender and accept the fact that I'm not the one with all the power. It gets easier. You know, it also gives me some inner peace and some freedom, you know, for some serenity, because I don't have to bear the weight of everything, trying to force outcomes, trying to make the world evolve around me and what I think it should be. And it's a new level of freedom. You'll find that each step that we work is a new level of freedom.
Awesome, thank you. So, based upon your own personal experience, why is it important to work the steps correctly, or why is it important to work this step correctly before moving on to the others?
Okay, I've read in the recovery literature that every journey begins with one step, and so it is with step one. And this is the beginning of the recovery process, and we cannot go any further until we've worked this step. It says that word for word, quote, we can't go any further until we've worked this step. What that means to me is if I don't work this step, I'm going to either die, end up in jail, and if I'm lucky, back in treatment, starting all over again. So this is the only step that I have to work perfectly in my life every day. There's so many things that I have to accept and surrender to. And one of those, for example, on the way to work, I have traffic laws I got to obey. Red light, stop sign. And there's rules at work, rules where I live. I want to park my boat at my house, but the community says, no, you're not allowed to park your boat at your house. So the more I learn to accept and surrender, the more freedom I get. Or I can fight everything, go against the grain like I used to, and get me nowhere, just cause me stress. So it's a win-win. When others see me practicing the principles in step one, which by the way, the principles are honesty, of course, the how of the program, which is an acronym for honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. And then the other principles are humility, surrender, and acceptance. There's 6 spiritual principles in step one. And each one of those, it says in our literature, we got to make those principles a fundamental part of who we are. That means we got to become them. We got to live them. Yeah, we learn them and we read about them, but how are we implementing those in our life? So I read something interesting about step one recently. It said, you know, I can easily surrender to my higher power and pray every day in the morning, you know, asking for some guidance. And I can pray at night with gratitude, thanking my higher power for the day and all my blessings. But what am I doing between those prayers? Am I working step one? Am I really accepting of others unconditionally? I mean, I learned my acceptance is part of accepting others for who they are. I want to be accepted for who I am. So we all have character flaws. And if we want to be accepted, what we put out there comes back to us. I love and accept unconditionally, and I get that back in return.
Very good. So we'll close it with this. What can you recommend to those watching this video right now when it comes to understanding step number one? Something to close us out with.
Okay. I think the first word and the third word, they're both we in step one. And that kind of ties in with the first tradition in the fellowships, which is our common welfare should come first, not me and my motives. Our common welfare should come first, and fellowship unity. My personal recovery depends on fellowship unity. Okay, so it basically means that I have to do this with others that are trying to do it as well as me, trying to reach the same goals as me in recovery. And it also means that I need to do what's best for the group and not what's best for my selfish motives. So it ties in with step one, because step one is a surrender step. And part of that surrender is I know I have to be a part of something bigger than me. The group has more power than me. My higher power sends messages through other group members. So I need to have that unity in the fellowship, because my personal recovery depends on it. And this may sound silly or far-fetched, but without the fellowship, I die. Where else can I go, talk about what's going on with me, and not get taken away, by the cops or with a big net over to the psych ward? So, it's a loving, accepting, all the fellowships welcome you with open arms. So we have to be part of that. We need others to do this. I've tried to do it on my own and I just can't. So the we is a very important thing in that step.
Thank you very much, Craig.